young lives. 4 couples, all gone within 3 years, and the killer? Still a mystery. Between 1986 and 1989, a quiet, tree-lined road in Virginia turned into the stage for one of the most disturbing unsolved crime sprees in American history. It's known as the Colonial Parkway Murders, and it's a case that has baffled investigators, terrified locals, and haunted the families of the victims for nearly 4 decades. These weren't random crimes scattered across years and places. They were concentrated, brutal, consistent in their strangeness. And for decades, nobody could say with certainty who was responsible. Tonight, we're going to slow things down and walk through the story step by step. We'll look at the parkway itself, why it was the perfect trap. We'll revisit the nights each couple vanished. We'll examine the suspects, the theories, and finally the shocking 2024 breakthrough that named a killer, but didn't end the mystery. Stick with me, because this case is proof that even answers can leave you with more questions. The Colonial Parkway is 23 miles of scenic road, part of the Colonial National Historical Park in Virginia. It connects Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown, the cradle of American history. But if you've ever driven it at night, you know why locals describe it with a shiver. There are no streetlights, no commercial stops, just dense forest, the smell of the river, and long, isolated overlooks where you can park and disappear into the shadows. At night, the road feels cut off from the world. For young couples in the 1980s, that isolation was part of the charm. The parkway was a lover's lane, a place to escape parents, campus rules, or nosy neighbors. But that same seclusion made it a hunter's dream. No lights, few witnesses, and the sound of water close enough to swallow screams. October 1986. Kathy Thomas, 27, a former Navy officer turned stockbroker, and her girlfriend, 21-year-old student Rebecca Dowski, were last seen leaving a computer lab one evening. They never made it home. Days later, a jogger stumbled upon Kathy's white Honda Civic at the bottom of an overlook along the parkway. Inside was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Kathy was crammed into the trunk. Becky lay in the back seat. Both had been strangled with rope, their throats cut so deep they were nearly decapitated. The killer even tried to set the car on fire by dousing it in diesel fuel, but never struck a match. And here's the detail that haunts investigators. During the struggle, Kathy managed to pull out a handful of the killer's hair. DNA, decades ahead of its time, sitting there waiting. Less than a year later, it happened again. On the night of September 19th, 1987, David Knobling, 20, a hardworking young man who helped his father in the family business, met up with 14-year-old Robin Edwards. Robin was just a kid in 8th grade, sneaking out after midnight to hang out. 2 days later, David's black Ford Ranger was discovered at the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge across the James River. The doors were open, keys still in the ignition. The radio was on, windshield wipers slapping back and forth in the rain. By September 23rd, the tide revealed the truth. Their bodies washed up on the shore. Both had been shot execution style in the back of the head. Robin was partially unclothed and had been sexually assaulted. Less than a year later, it happened again. On the night of September 19th, 1987, David Knobling, 20, a hardworking young man who helped his father in the family business, met up with 14-year-old Robin Edwards. Robin was just a kid in 8th grade, sneaking out after midnight to hang out. 2 days later, David's black Ford Ranger was discovered at the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge across the James River. The doors were open, keys still in the ignition. The radio was on, windshield wipers slapping back and forth in the rain. By September 23rd, the tide revealed the truth. Their bodies washed up on the shore. Both had been shot execution style in the back of the head. Robin was partially unclothed and had been sexually assaulted. April 1988. Keith Call, 20, and Cassandra Haley, 18, went out on what was supposed to be their first date. They left a college party around midnight. Hours later, their red Toyota Celica was found at the York River overlook, the exact same spot where Kathy and Becky had been murdered. The keys were on the driver's seat. Keith's glasses and watch were on the dashboard. Cassandra's clothes were piled neatly in the back seat. But there was no sign of Keith or Cassandra themselves. To this day, their bodies have never been found. The final known pair vanished on September 5, 1989. Daniel Lauer, 21, was helping his brother move to Virginia Beach. Along for the ride was 18-year-old Anna Maria Phelps, who agreed to tag along. They were driving Daniel's gold 1972 Chevy Nova. But they never made it. The car was found abandoned at a rest stop along I-64, oddly, in the opposite direction of their intended trip. Weeks later, hunters stumbled upon their skeletal remains in the woods. They'd been covered with Daniel's electric blanket from the car. The advanced state of decomposition made it hard to say how they died, but evidence hinted at stab wounds. 4 couples. 8 victims. In just 3 years. Cars left in strange positions. Keys, wallets, clothes left behind. Almost no signs of struggle. Killings happening in secluded, water-adjacent spots. And the scariest part? No one knew if this was one serial killer or several unrelated murders staged to look connected. The investigation was doomed from the start. First, multiple agencies were involved: the FBI, Virginia State Police, local sheriffs. Coordination was poor. Evidence wasn't always shared. In one case, families later learned that key evidence sat untested in boxes for decades. Second, this was the 1980s. DNA existed, but the National CODIS database didn't. The handful of blonde-hair Kathy Thomas pulled from her attacker? Useless back then. Potentially case-cracking today. Third, communication with families was disastrous. Some parents were even told to stop speaking to the press because it complicated the investigation. And finally, rumors began to swirl. Was the killer one of their own? An officer? An agent? Or even someone from Camp Peary, the CIA's secretive training facility just miles away? One of the earliest theories was that the murderer was impersonating law enforcement. Victims' cars looked like they'd been pulled over or searched. Kathy Thomas even had her wallet out, as if she was about to show her ID. Then came another suspect, a fisherman named Alan Wade Pokey Wilmer Sr. He was already on the FBI's radar back in 1988 because witnesses saw him harassing couples along the parkway. He drove a distinctive blue van, hunted, carried knives, and worked with ropes on boats. But here's the twist: despite being questioned, even polygraphed, he was released. His DNA was never entered into CODIS, the national database. The case attracted endless theories. The cop theory: victims' behavior suggested trust. Cars looked like they'd been pulled over. The lack of resistance screamed authority figure. Even the FBI admitted early on they suspected law enforcement involvement. The fisherman theory: diesel fuel, nautical rope, knife wounds, water-adjacent locations. All signs pointed to someone from the fishing world. Someone like Wilmer. Multiple killers. Some investigators believe no single person could control couples so consistently. Detective Larry McKinn stated, "The level of control suggests more than one offender working together." The CIA rumor, nearby Camp Peary fueled conspiracy theories. Whispers of rogue CIA agents using the parkway for training or cover-ups were rampant. Some theories were plausible, others pure paranoia. But the uncertainty kept families in limbo for decades. The breakthrough, 2024. For decades, the case sat cold. Families begged for answers. Books, documentaries, even podcasts tried to keep the spotlight alive. Then, in January 2024, came the bombshell. DNA from the murder of Robin Edwards and David Knobling matched Alan Wade Wilmer Sr., the fisherman. He died in 2017, never facing charges. Investigators also tied into the murder of Teresa Howell in 1989, outside the Parkway cases. Finally, after nearly 40 years, families had a name. But here's the gut punch: only one of the 4 Parkway cases was officially solved. The others remain open. Was Wilmer responsible for all of them? Or just some? Did he act alone? Think about it. Why didn't Wilmer's DNA get uploaded earlier, when technology caught up? Why did the FBI suggest to families, even back in the 80s, that the killer might be law enforcement? Why stage the cars the way he did, keys on the seat, clothes folded, wipers on? And if Wilmer was the man behind it all, why did the murders suddenly stop after 1989? Even with a named suspect, the Colonial Parkway murders remain one of the strangest, most frustrating mysteries in American true crime. 3 of the 4 cases remain unsolved. Families still light candles, still demand accountability, still fight to keep the story alive. The Colonial Parkway, once a historic and scenic drive, is now a place forever tied to fear and mystery. For many Virginians, its bridges and overlooks are haunted not by ghosts, but by unanswered questions. The Colonial Parkway murders are a reminder of how fragile safety can be, how quickly innocence can vanish, and how sometimes, even when the truth comes out, it doesn't set anyone free.